This is Lenny Farlee, Purdue University Extension Forester. Now let's ID that tree. In this edition of ID That Tree, we're going to take a look at a non-native and very invasive bramble species we can find here in Indiana and the Midwest, and that is Multiflora rose. Multiflora rose is arguably one of our worst invasives on the landscape, being very competitive, particularly in full sunlight conditions with native vegetation, and able to even climb up into trees and shrubs a considerable distance. So we do have several native roses, and we'll talk a little bit about how to tell Multiflora rose apart from those natives. So Multiflora rose has alternate leaf arrangement, compound leaves with oftentimes 7 leaflets, but sometimes can be 5 to 9. 7 tends to be the most common number though. Very sharply hooked thorns. And these can make Multiflora rose almost impenetrable in terms of trying to get through the thickets that it forms. Another characteristic that can help us separate Multiflora rose from our native roses is right at the base of the leaf. And so we've got this little structure at the base of the leaf, which is a widening wing called a stipule. And along the edge of the stipule on Multiflora rose, we have little hairs projecting off away from the stipule. That is characteristic of Multiflora rose, but is absent on our native roses. So our native roses will have a stipule, but you will not see those little hairs extending clear back to the base of the leaf. Very good characteristic for separating the two. Another thing we can look at is the fruit. And so Multiflora rose has clusters of multiple white to pinkish flowers in the spring, and the flowers are relatively small, less than 1 inch in diameter oftentimes. And they produce these clusters of rose hips that are also quite small. Our native roses will produce larger pink flowers, although fewer flowers in a cluster, and the fruit tend to be much larger as well, and fewer fruit in a cluster also. So Multiflora rose, really problematic invasive species, one that certainly should be worked against on the landscape. So look for those hairy stipules, the small clusters of multiple fruit, and that will help you separate it from our native desirable roses.